Calm, low. Let the silence sit before the first word. You already know the feeling. You felt it before, standing in a hallway or sitting across a dinner table, watching someone you love say your name in exactly the right voice, at exactly the right pitch, and something inside you went very, very still. Not because they said anything wrong, not because anything was missing, but because something was almost too right. Pause. 3 full seconds. Welcome back to DreadRelic. Tonight, we are going somewhere most people don't let themselves go. We are going to sit with a question that the rational mind refuses to answer. Have you ever looked at someone you have known your entire life and realized, in the space of one quiet breath, that their eyes were not quite where they were yesterday? Let that question hang. Don't rush it. Not their expression, not their mood, their eyes. The specific angle at which they rest when they are at rest. The way they find you in a room. Tonight, I have 3 stories for you. None of them will explain what you felt in that hallway. None of them will make it easier to look at the person asleep beside you. But all of them will make you understand, deeply, quietly, uncomfortably, that you are not the only one who has noticed. Soft breath. Begin the turn. The first story begins with a smile. Settle into the rhythm. Every sentence deliberate. Marcus had been married for 11 years. 11 years is long enough to memorize a person. Long enough to know the sound of their breathing in the dark. The weight of their footstep on the 3rd stair. The precise geometry of the way they smile when something has genuinely surprised them. He knew his wife's smile the way a musician knows a piece they have played 10,000 times. Not by thinking about it, by feel. So when she smiled at him one Tuesday morning across the kitchen counter, and something in it was wrong, he did not know how to say that. He could not point to what was different. The shape was the same. The duration was the same. She even laughed afterward. The same small private laugh she had always made after smiling at him. But it did not reach her eyes. It stopped just below them, like warmth that fades a few inches from its source, low and even, no drama yet. He told himself he was tired. He told himself she was tired. He told himself 11 years of marriage simply meant you notice things, and noticing things sometimes felt like suspicion when it wasn't. But that night, he couldn't sleep, and at 2 a.m, he walked down to the kitchen for a glass of water, and she was already there, standing at the counter, in the dark, not moving, not drinking anything, not looking at her phone, just standing, facing the wall, perfectly still. He watched her for a long moment from the doorway. She did not startle. She did not turn around. She simply said, in a voice that was absolutely precisely hers, "I couldn't sleep either." Pause. 2 seconds. Over the following week, he cataloged the differences the way you might catalog a dream, knowing it would dissolve if he looked at it directly. She no longer touched her food at dinner. Not a bite. She would sit with a full plate, and then clear it wordlessly after he finished eating. And when he asked if she was feeling all right, she would say yes, just not very hungry, and smile at him again with that smile that stopped short of her eyes. She did not sleep. Not that he could tell. When he woke in the night, she was always already awake, lying beside him, with her eyes open, looking at the ceiling with an expression that was not worry and was not peace, but was something more like patience, as though she were waiting for something whose arrival she was entirely certain of. He found the ring on a Thursday, her wedding ring, the one she had worn every day since the afternoon he slid it onto her finger in front of 43 people in a garden in September. It was sitting in the back of the cutlery drawer, tucked behind the spare batteries and the twist ties and the collected debris of a shared life. She would never put it there. In 11 years, she had never once taken it off. Now the coldness comes in. Measured. Don't perform it. He confronted her that evening. He didn't raise his voice. He simply set the ring on the table between them and looked at her. She looked back at him for a long time, and then she said very quietly, "I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to be her." He asked her what that meant. She picked up the ring and placed it back on her finger, and she smiled at him, the same smile that had been wrong since Tuesday, and said, in a voice that was his wife's voice from the inside out, "It means I'm getting better." Hold, breathe, move on without comment. A slightly different energy here, more clinical, more deliberate. Priya is a methodical person. She had been one her entire life, the kind of child who tested hypotheses before drawing conclusions, who needed to understand the mechanism before she accepted the result. So when her brother came back from a 4-day hiking trip in October, and something about him felt wrong, she did not panic. She made a plan. She had noticed it within the first hour of seeing him. Nothing she could name. He looked the same. He moved the same. He made the same jokes in the same order and laughed at them the same way he always had. But there was something underneath all of it. Something frictionless about him, something too smooth, like a photograph of a person rather than the person themselves. She told herself she was projecting, that 4 days alone in the mountains had changed his energy, and she was misreading exhaustion as absence. But the scientist in her needed to be sure. Slow down here. Let the trap build. She invented a dog. This requires a particular kind of nerve to sit across from someone you love and deliberately build a false memory and offer it to them like a gift, waiting to see if they take it. She was telling him about a dream she had, she said, about their childhood home, about the back garden in summer. And then, casually, as though it had simply surfaced, "Do you remember Bruno? The way he used to dig under the fence? There had been no dog. They had grown up in a flat on the second floor. There had been no garden, no fence, no Bruno." She watched his face. One beat, then the verdict. He smiled. "Bruno," he said. "God, yes. He was relentless, wasn't he? Every single summer. And then he added details. Details she had not given him. The color of the dog's coat. The specific sound he made when he wanted to come inside. A summer afternoon when their father had to fill in the hole Bruno had dug for the 3rd time in a week and had laughed despite himself. She felt the cold move through her. Slowly, thoroughly. Pause. Here is where the story turns. She was about to speak, to say the name of the test, to watch his face change when he said, "I know what you're doing." She went still. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Calm, almost kind. The way someone looks when they are about to deliver news they have been carrying for a while. "There was no dog," he said. "I know that. I was testing you too." She asked him what he meant. He said, "The hiking trip. Something happened on the second night. I'm not entirely sure what. But when I came back and saw you, I could tell." He paused. "You're not the same either. Are you?" She had no answer, because sitting there across from the person who wore her brother's face, she realized she could not remember, with any certainty, who she had been before he left. She could not point to the moment she herself had changed. She could only feel, with absolute clarity, that somewhere in the house there were 2 real people, and they had been gone for a while. The quietest act, nearly a whisper. Every word lands alone. The 3rd story does not have a name. The person who experienced it is 12 years old. For our purposes, we will call her Noah. Noah first noticed the silence on a Sunday, not the silence of a quiet house. She knew that silence, had grown up in it, found it comfortable. This was a different kind. This was the silence of a house that had decided to be quiet, that was performing quiet in the way that something pretends to be still when it knows it is being watched. Her parents were in the living room. They were sitting in their usual chairs, facing the television, which was off. They were not reading. They were not talking. They were not on their phones. They were simply sitting, facing a blank screen, in perfect stillness. When Noah came into the room, they both turned to look at her simultaneously. The exact same angle, the exact same speed. And her mother said, "There you are. Are you hungry?" And Noah said she wasn't, and went back to her room, and sat on her bed for a very long time. Slow. Careful. The horror here is accumulation. Over the next several days, she began to test the edges of it. She would walk softly past the hallway in the evening, and look through the gap in the door, and they would be still, utterly still, not breathing visibly, not shifting, until she moved, at which point one of them would turn in the precise direction of the sound she had made, and resume being apparent. She began to understand that they moved only when they knew she was there, that when she was not watching, they did not need to pretend. She started making plans to leave. This took courage she should not have needed at 12 years old. Packing a small bag, hiding it under her bed, identifying the safest path to the front door. She chose a Wednesday morning, when her father had supposedly left for work, and her mother was supposedly in the garden. She came downstairs at 7:30, bag in hand, and walked to the front door. The turn. Say it plainly. That's what makes it land. Her father was standing on the front step. He had not left for work. He was simply standing there, facing the street in his coat, completely still. When the door opened, he turned to look at her. That same smooth, calibrated turn, and smiled. "Good morning," he said. "You're up early." She looked past him. The neighbor across the street was standing in her driveway, not getting into her car, not checking her phone, just standing, facing forward. The man 2 doors down was in his front garden, also standing, also still. She could see 4 more people from where she stood on the step, all of them motionless, all of them facing no particular direction, with no particular expression. Her father said, "Come inside, Noah. It's cold." And she understood in that moment that there was no outside, that the boundary she had been planning to cross had never existed, that whatever had replaced her parents had not started in her house. Let it land. Don't add commentary. Transition slowly. Come back to yourself. Quiet. Measured. Personal. Identity is not a fixed thing. We know this. We have always known this. The self shifts over years, over loss, over love. The person you were at 7 is as much a stranger as any stranger. But there is a difference between change and replacement. There is a difference between someone growing and someone being swapped out, rebuilt from the outside in by something that understands the surface but cannot find the inside. And I think that most of us have felt this. Not as horror, not yet. Just as a flicker, a frame dropped in the film of someone's face. A moment where the person across the table from you was for just a fraction of a second, not quite there. Pause. The final question. I want to ask you something before we close tonight. I want you to think right now of the person closest to you in the world, the one whose face you know better than your own, the one whose voice you could identify in a crowd of 1,000. When did you last really look at them? Not glance, not check in. Look. Have you ever seen a glitch in someone you love? A moment where the performance slipped just enough for you to notice, and then closed over again before you could be certain? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every one of them tonight. This is DreadRelic. I'll see you in the dark. Sign off. Silence before the outro music.